I got to say, I'm watching the news, and I am now convinced that all news stories are essentially one news story. All news stories are one news story. What is the story? The story is that for 8 years, the media dedicated itself to promoting and protecting Barack Obama. And that changed Obama, and that changed the news media, right? Remember, the media was willing to investigate private citizens who questioned Obama and brought out his socialist instincts. They supported him when he lied about his radical agenda and his deep relationships with the terrorist Bill Ayers and with the anti-America preacher Jeremiah Wright. They supported all this stuff. They played down scandal after scandal, Fast and Furious, Benghazi, the IRS, the persecution of reporters, and they supported unworkable policies like Obamacare and the Iran deal. And Obama, this is the thing, this is the true narrative, is if you go back and look at it, Obama didn't realize that the press would be that supine. He knew they supported him, he knew they'd be with him, but he did not realize they would utterly corrupt the institution of journalism to support him. And at first he made noises about being a moderate, right? He didn't support gay marriage, and he would talk about illegal aliens and say, I can't do anything about this because it's against the Constitution. But slowly he realized that he could actually have axe murdered Michelle Obama and the kids, and the New York Times would have run a feature saying this was a fun new way to treat your family. So once he realized that, he got bolder and bolder and bolder. He dismissed he just would lie, like he would dismiss the IRS corruption. There's not a smidgen of corruption. He lied about Benghazi on TV. And remember, Candy Crowley, let's show that clip of Candy Crowley defended him, helped him lie when Mitt Romney called him out. Can you play that cut?
It took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
He did call it an act of terror. It did as well take 2 weeks or so for the whole idea of there being a riot out there about this tape to come out. You're correct about that.
Candy Crowley in a debate, debating for Barack Obama. An amazing moment, but only really what had been going on the entire time. They were protecting him, and they were protecting his plan to fundamentally transform America. Basically, not into like a communist slave state, but into the European socialist state which we see crumbling. I mean, if you're paying attention now, our economy has taken off like a rocket under Donald Trump, while the European economy is continuing to be mired. In Italy, they have 30% youth unemployment. In Greece and Spain, they have the same thing. And there's these rumblings of communism, of fascism, all these things happening as England descends into kind of Islamic rule on the side. Germany, the same thing. And so Europe is dying, and that's what the press, Obama, and the left want for us. So every story is about this. Every story is about the fact that the press lied for 8 years, that the press abandoned their post for 8 years, that they demonized Mitt Romney, they demonized John McCain, they demonized Joe the plumber, they demonized you, Sarah Palin, everybody. They just keep this thing in place. And as Obama realized what he could do, he just got more and more corrupt. He corrupted the government more and more because he knew the press would turn a blind eye. We can also talk on another day about the fact that as his policies didn't work, rather than admit it, he turned to race baiting. But that's another day. Let's just talk about what happened to the press. So now every story is about covering up what they did. So let's take a look at the IG report, right? This is, despite the misleading headlines, right? The Inspector General's report shows intense bias. It was the Inspector General's investigation into the FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. That was the subject. And you have to remember, the IG works for justice. This is not a report for the people. This is a report for justice. It's basically an in-house thing telling him what to do. He said, we did not find documentary or testimonial evidence that improper considerations, including political bias, directly affected the specific investigative decisions we reviewed about the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's email. But all that means is that no one confessed and no one left a paper trail. The bias was everywhere. But just look at how the press seized on this, right? Because every news story is one news story. Every news story is to cover up who the journalists have become. Listen to David Brooks selling this thing.
The headline to me is that the institution basically worked, that the actual investigations were basically done without any political bias. And that's worth reminding people that there is such a thing as a professional civil service these days. when everyone thinks it's all political and it's all a swamp. It's not a swamp. Those are hardworking people, and they seem to have been basically doing their job. There have been a couple demerits on that. One, the few emails that were where people within the FBI were motivated by a Trump bias.
That is utter crap. I mean, that is like crap of the purest ray serene. It really is. I mean, I don't understand how David Brooks can sit there and look at a camera and use his position to sell that garbage. But that is essentially what they all did on the left, on the entire mainstream media. Several agents in top positions on both the Hillary Clinton investigation and the Russian collusion investigation had expressed toxic hatred of Donald Trump, saying they couldn't understand why anybody did. They said all Trump supporters were, quote, poor to middle class, uneducated, lazy POS. And we all know what that means. The entire investigation took place under the assumption that Hillary would not be prosecuted and that investigators were just going through the motions. They all said this. Remember James Comey, who got they cleaned his clock in this report. They called him insubordinate, but they were talking about his decision to announce the conclusions of the report without going to the DOJ. Well, why did he do that? He told them, I did that to create a sense of justice more broadly in the country, that things are fair, not fixed. Why would he have to do that? Why would he have to reassure the country that things were fair, not fixed, if it weren't for the fact that he knew the DOJ was fixed. They weren't going to prosecute. And the agents were saying things like, this is a lot of work and BS for a political exercise. No one at DOJ is going to prosecute. These are quotes from the Inspector General's report. And at one point, Lisa Page, we all know the paramour of Peter Strzok at this point, she's a top FBI official, and she said, she told people when they were going in to question Hillary Clinton, right, she might be our next president, so the last thing you need is us going in there loaded for bear. In other words, take it easy because no one's going to convict this woman. So here's the thing about this. What gets me about this is not what it says about the investigation. It's what it says about the people right this minute at the DOJ, the leadership at the DOJ. When they sent, there's this amazing text, the most mind-boggling text is Lisa Page texts to her adulterous lover. And I like the fact they said we used work phones to send these texts because we didn't want our wives and our spouses to catch us cheating. So in other words, they're cheating on the investigation, but they're also cheating from their spouses. So they have to hide all their cheating from everybody. So Page texts Strzok, Trump's never going to become president, right? Right? And Strzok responds, and this is, remember, top investigator in the Hillary email thing and the Russian collusion thing. Strzok says, no, he won't become president. We will stop it. And the Inspector General says, this is not only indicative of a biased state of mind, but even more seriously implies a willingness to take official action to impact the presidential candidate's electoral prospects. What's important about this is not the high state of corruption in Obama's DOJ and FBI. What's important is when they sent these texts to Congress, when Congress finally tore these texts out of the clenched fist of the DOJ, they redacted Strzok's response. And that tells you that right this minute, right now, as we are sitting here, the FBI is protecting itself. Christopher Wray, the new director of the FBI, came out and he said, nothing in this report impugns the integrity of our workforce as a whole or the FBI as an institution. Like hell, it doesn't. It really does. And, Trey Gowdy, who has been all about, let Mueller do his work and let Mueller, we're going to trust Mueller and all this. He is livid. And they are saying that we will impeach Rod Rosenstein if he does not hand over these documents. They had a meeting Friday night, and Congress never works on Friday night, where they went in and said, listen, buddy, this is it. Send us these documents. And Trey Gowdy talks about the fact, the other important thing about the IG is that it impugns the Mueller report through no fault of Mueller's. It just means all his witnesses are now no good. Here's Trey Gowdy talking about that. Trey Gowdy, former prosecutor, cut number 10.
I don't know what Mueller has. I do know this, that bias is so pervasive, and everyone who's ever stood in front of a jury and had to explain it away will tell you it is the most miserable feeling in the world. And I have never seen this level of bias. So you have Peter Strzok, who can't think of a single American who can vote for Donald Trump, and you got Peter Strzok who says, we'll stop it. The campaign and the presidency will stop the campaign, and then if that doesn't work, the day after the election, he's talking about impeachment. So how would you like that to be your lead investigator? 2 weeks after you're assigned to look into what a foreign country did to us, the only thing he can think to talk about is an insurance policy to keep Donald Trump from winning, and then he says, we'll stop it. I assume the we is the FBI, so how would you like, if you're Bob Mueller, to present that case to a jury?
So when I say every news story is one news story, and it's all about the press covering up its abandonment of its duties in order to sell the fundamental transformation of America to us in the person of Barack Obama, when we're talking about the border now, and there's this sudden hysteria about children being separated from their parents at the border, we are simply talking about covering up this, covering up the good economy, covering up the fact that Donald Trump has made some leeway, some headway with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. We don't know how that's going to work out, but he made some headway with him. It is all about covering that up and covering up the fact that the IRS, the State Department, and now we know the Justice Department were all corrupted and turned into an urban Democrat machine by the Chicago politician Obama. And every story is about that. Listen to the way the press talked to Sarah Sanders. I'll explain what's going on at the border. All right. Let me explain this from the top. All right. The Trump administration has not changed any policies or any rules about the border in terms of separating children from imprisoned parents. There is a rule that went into effect in the 90s, I believe it was, that said you cannot incarcerate children with their parents. The only difference is at first, a lot of the people coming over the border were all men. But recently, they have become, last 10 years or so, this is before Trump, they've become families. And so as the families are coming over and people are being arrested for breaking our laws, the law says you cannot put the children in prison with their arrested family. So the only way to do this would be to let the family and let the whole family walk free. And if you do that, you'll never see them again. So in other words, what the press is now mobilizing for in part of the fundamental transformation of America that they want to continue is letting everybody in free. They are not concerned about these children who were, in fact, the same policy was in place during the Obama administration, and Hillary Clinton herself said that this is what you have to do. Here is, what's her name? Christiane Amanpour, journalist, talking to Hillary Clinton about this and trying to get her to say, what do we do with these immigrant kids? It's cut 13.
Should they be able to stay here? It's safer.
It may be safer, but that's not the answer. I do not.
So should they be sent back?
Well, first of all, we have to provide the best emergency care we can provide. We have children 5 and 6 years old who have come up from Central America. We need to do more to provide border security in southern Mexico.
They should be sent back now.
Well, they should be sent back as soon as it can be determined who responsible adults and their families are, because there are concerns about whether all of them can be sent back. But I think all of them who can be should be reunited with their families. And just as Vice President Biden is arguing today in Central America, we've got to do more. I started this when I was secretary, to deal with the violence in this region, to deal with border security. But we have to send a clear message. Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean the child gets to stay. So we don't want to send a message that is contrary to our laws or will encourage more children to make that dangerous journey.
This is Hillary Clinton, who hasn't figured out what the press wants, or else she'd give it to them, which is they want an open border so that they can transform our country like Germany has been transformed, like England has been transformed. That's what they want. And that is what they're doing. Every story is the same story. It's all about how can the press get to the place that they wanted Obama to get to, but Obama didn't figure out soon enough that he could do anything he wanted and the press wouldn't stop him. Here is Henry Cuellar, a Texas congressman, a Democrat, talking about the fact that the same thing was going on, the same policy was in place during the Obama administration. We know this because when the left was first tweeting out pictures of children in cages, they were actually pictures from 2014. So we know that this whole thing is a scam. I'm not saying they shouldn't fix the policy. Of course they should fix the policy. That's a legislative matter, not a Trump matter. But here is Henry Cuellar talking about the fact that this was covered up, a Democrat talking about the fact that this was covered up under Obama.
There was, according to the Washington Post reporting, a surging number of unaccompanied minors being apprehended at the border. In 2014, there were nearly 70,000, according to the Post reporting. And that same year, there was this viral image of children being kept in a cage at a detention center. Do you see any parallels here? How different is what we're seeing today from these images?
In many ways, and I think I don't know what image you're using, but I released some of those photos because it was kept very quiet under the Obama administration. There were large numbers of people coming in. The Obama administration was trying to keep this quiet, and I don't know which image you're using, but I released some photos that I had gone about those young kids that were kept there, and we're still seeing a numbers.
So let's just compare the way the media has questioned the presidential spokesman on this as opposed to the way they did under the Obama administration. Here's cut number 16 of Sarah Sanders being abused by our completely dishonest press.
You're a parent. Don't you have any empathy for what these people are going through? They have less than you do.
Guys,
Sarah, come on,
settle down.
Seriously.
I'm trying to be serious, but I'm not going to have you yell out of turn. Jill, please call.
It's a law, and they have, these people have nothing.
Hey, Brian, I know you want to get some more TV time, but that's not what this is about. If I want to recognize you, go ahead, Jill.
Honestly, answer the question. It's a serious question. These people have nothing. They come to the border with nothing, and you throw children in cages. You're a parent. You're a parent of young children. Don't you have any empathy for what they go through?
That is shameful. I mean, if we don't have a country that is run by the law, then the country is simply run by men. It's run by what people think is good at that moment. And who would be in charge of that? Oh, it would be Donald Trump. Do they want that? No, of course they don't. Let's just compare that to the way the press treated Obama, who was doing exactly the same thing, exactly the same policies. Just take a look at cut number 2 here.
People in the mainstream media have been accused of being afraid to speak truth to power, and I've got some truth to power for you right now. I've been observing. Yeah. Your dog looks like he's out of control.
Yeah, so that's what Obama is thinking right now as he watches the media covering up for him. He's thinking this. You know, I just want to remind you before we go to Michael Knowles and talk about the World Cup I'm sorry, I dozed off. Before we go to Knowles and talk about whatever it was, I've forgotten now what I was even talking about. I just want to remind you, it is 3 years, I think it's 3 years today or yesterday, that Trump announced his candidacy. I want to play this montage of the press reaction to this.
I am officially running for President of the United States.
There are no words. How do you even have a straight face right now? There are no words to describe what just happened.
Ed Rendell, do you have any doubt that this is anything more than a carnival show?
And you watched that speech today, we all laugh about it, and I'm sitting here laughing out loud,
Yep.
For the entire, front part of the show here as we're talking about it.
I mean, it was a rambling mess of a speech. That said, it was very entertaining. I was howling.
He's got gumudgeons of money, he's got a lot of recognition, and he just became the 12th presidential candidate for the Republican Party. Is it typical Donald Trump fashion, or is it hilarity run amok?
This morning, some Republicans say they're worried Trump will turn the campaign into a circus.
Party leaders worry Trump's presence will turn the primary into a joke.
America's largest Latino civil rights organization called Trump an exceedingly silly man.
Donald Trump is a fool.
Hell froze over, and now we're stuck in the ice with Donald Trump.
Chuck, you and I have seen this public dance from Trump before. I guess the question is this candidacy for real? Will it be significant?
It's like I can't tell if this is politics or if this is just PR from a celebrity.
For the National Press Corps and other elites, Donald Trump's campaign is a pure vanity exercise and a target ripe for outright mockery or low-level derision. Done.
On the one hand, he's a late-night joke.
Half an hour, the most beautifully ridiculous jibber-jabber.
On the other, he's the proverbial skunk at the garden party.
All right, I just wanted you to hear that last line especially. He is the skunk at the garden party. Whose garden party do you think that is? Whose garden party? It's the elites, it's the press. He's the skunk at the garden party. It happens to be a garden party full of skunks, but they didn't mention that. When I say every news story is one story, that's the story. Somebody broke up the garden party that was moving so smoothly toward a European vision of the dead West.